Hi, and thank you so much to DDAR and the U.S. Consulate General for inviting me here. So, my name is Devi Lockwood, and 4 years ago, I began recording audio stories of water and climate change from around the world. I set myself the goal of documenting 1,001 voices, a nod to Shahrazad, the badass woman from Arabian Nights who uses storytelling to save her own life from a murderous king. If you haven't already, check out Alf Layla wa Layla. It's a delicious, interwoven epic. My aim is to humanize the parallel issues of water and climate change. Both are often discussed in numerical terms: millimeters of sea level rise, degrees of temperature change, parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, or numbers of people displaced. The way I see it, both telling and listening to stories is a form of activism. Listening builds empathy, and empathy is a powerful tool to dismantle apathy. So I'm not saying that listening is always easy, but it is necessary. It becomes harder to ignore a problem as large as something like climate change or environmental degradation in general if we hear a voice of someone who is impacted. The inspiration for this project came from my undergraduate work in folklore and mythology at Harvard. For my senior thesis, I rode my bicycle solo for 800 miles down the Mississippi River, following signs that looked like this. And I started in Memphis, Tennessee, and ended all the way down in Venice, Louisiana, which is where the river meets the Gulf of Mexico. The Mississippi River drains 31 states and 2 Canadian provinces. It's huge. Along the way, I documented over 50 hours of stories from people I met. On that first trip, I wasn't listening for stories about water or climate change. I wanted to hear anything that people had to say. As a student of folklore and mythology, I learned that in the words of Keith Basso, wisdom sits in places. Stories, in other words, are intimately linked to the landscape in which they are told. I wanted to go to the place where I thought stories might be. A mighty river seemed like a logical fit. I made a cardboard sign, sort of like this one, and it said open call for stories. And people talked to me, all sorts of people. A river guide named Chris in Clarksdale told me that there are no straight lines in river speak, that in the last 100 years, the Army Corps of Engineers has channelized the Mississippi River to prevent flooding, but now that river water moves faster, shuttling sediment more quickly out into the Gulf of Mexico. Wetlands are disappearing at a rate of football fields per day, and this combination of rapid water movement and also oil dredging in the Gulf Coast creates straight lines where there ought to be curves, intensifying saltwater encroachment on the land. Hurricanes, fueled by warmer oceans, are stronger. And without wetlands to act as a buffer to slow down the hurricane, a storm becomes more intense, ripping through people's homes and lives. Later on down the road, I met a 57-year-old named Franny. When I stopped in front of her office to check the air in my bicycle tires, she invited me inside. Over a shared plate of fried shrimp, Franny told me about Hurricane Isaac in 2012 that washed away her home and her neighborhood. There were still piles that I rode my bicycle past on the side of the road that were the remnants of destroyed homes from Franny's community. Lives abandoned, plastic toy trucks, and kitchen appliances stacked under wood. Franny and her husband moved back to their plot of land in a mobile home just a few months after the storm. I couldn't imagine living anywhere else, she said. Do you think there will come a time when people can't live here anymore? I asked. I think so. Not in my lifetime, but you'll probably see it. To imagine the road I had been biking on underwater was chilling. 20 miles further, I could see where the ocean laps over the road at high tide. Locals jokingly refer to the endpoint of State Highway 23 as the end of the world. So the first thing I did with these Mississippi River stories was write poems. I will preface this by saying they don't rhyme, and I come from that delightfully weird American tradition of open verse poetry and can't rhyme to save my life. So while I was supposed to read poems here, I'm going to save you from listening to them, given that we're in Central Asia, the land of rhyming poetry, and I'm feeling a little bit shy. That said, if you want to read the thesis, bug me and I'll happily email it to you. So in preparing for this talk, I've realized that I've changed a lot in the past 4 years, and I don't know if I'm still a poet, even though I described myself that way at the outset. Poetry is the place I come from, the soil I grew up in, but not necessarily the direction I'm leaning towards. My favorite poems like Zinnias by Valerie Worth or Wild Geese by Mary Oliver have changed the way that I breathe. So I started from poetry and I returned to poetry because time is a tasty spiral, but now I'm here. To give you a sense of the journey so far, again, started out with open call for stories and then using the stories that I heard on the Mississippi River as a guide, I transitioned into asking questions more directly about water and climate change. So I started out with the People's Climate March in New York City back in September of 2014. It was 400,000 people there, which is the largest climate march to date. Then after that, I recorded audio at some of the Black Lives Matter protests happening in Ferguson, Missouri. After that, I revisited some cotton farmers I had met along the Mississippi River, recording their stories more in depth. And then I went to Fiji, where I heard stories about, sacred water supplies from indigenous elders there. After that, I was in Tuvalu, which is a tiny coral atoll nation in the Pacific that has really intense problems to do with groundwater supply due to climate change. And then after that, I started riding my bicycle again in New Zealand. I went from top to bottom, back up again, decided that I wanted to slow down, so I crowdfunded the money to take a cargo ship to Australia and wrote people poems and postcards from the boat in order to do that, which was super fun. The captain and crew would come up to me and be like, "Why are you writing all the time?" I'm like, "I have to earn my keep." And then landed in Australia, spent 6 months cycling up the East Coast, and then decided that I was still going to try not to fly, so I hitched a ride on 2 sailboats, which ended up not working out. So then I crowdfunded the money to take another cargo ship back to New Zealand. And then after trying not to fly for a year, I gave up and went to Thailand, where I recorded stories about the great depth of time, old water stories there, and also kind of newer things, especially in cities where people are forced to migrate as a result of water patterns that aren't as stable as they used to be. These are some novice monks who I met. And the Mekong River, of course, is a mighty source of storytelling in that part of the world, too. From there, I was a youth delegate at the UN climate talks in Morocco. And then the most recent circumnavigation, again, just zooming through this quickly, was recording stories in China, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, went north of the Arctic Circle for the first time by train. And yeah, continuing to be in awe of all of the beautiful things and beautiful stories that this planet has to share. So, to date, I have recorded almost 800 stories in 18 countries. The first half of the journey was on my bicycle, but now I'm not, and it's a work in progress. I'm figuring things out as I go, and transitioned out of poems into more multimedia forms that let the storytellers speak in their own voices, rather than having my words reinterpret theirs. So the project, as I've done it, has really taken on a shape of its own. The premise of my work is that all of our voices matter. I don't want to listen to just one authority figure or one scientist or one politician or one person who looks and thinks exactly like I do. That would be boring. I'm more interested in how our voices can connect and diverge, and I like things when they're a little bit messy. I want to highlight 2 stories that I heard in the last week in Balkhash and Bishkek. Also, this is where the journey's been so far. It's a draft of the map in progress that I'm working on, where you can click on a point and listen to a story someone's told me from that place. 5 out of 7 continents. We're gonna get there. So this is Darin Imanov, who I met at Rusakov School in Balkhash. And he told me a really wonderful story about his passion for conserving the torang tree and the myth about why that tree is so important in the first place. He's 13 years old, and he's working tirelessly to educate his community on why this tree is important, why the old stories about the torang tree matter, and how people can respect that moving forward. And the second storyteller, who I think is just absolutely marvelous from this part of the world, is Aidai Turudakunova. She's from Bishkek. She's 16 years old, and she is deeply concerned about air and water pollution in her own community. She told me that she wants to become an environmental engineer in order to solve the problems that she sees in her city, and I am massively inspired by her energy and her effort. So... to sum things up, I'm branching from poetry into creative nonfiction and audio storytelling and making a map on a website where you can click on a point, listen to a story from that place, and also collaborating with producer Sami Abuzid back in Boston to work on a podcast that will be 12 episodes. And my next destination after Kazakhstan, as was mentioned in the introduction, is the Arctic, the Canadian Arctic. So I'm going to be recording stories for the month of July alongside ArtCirque, which is an indigenous Arctic circus that's been going there for about 20 years. And I have support from the National Geographic Explorers Foundation for that. I'm very grateful. And yeah, acrobatics are awesome. So in sum, if you have any ideas for how to bring 1001 Stories into your community, let's talk. I think our voices are stronger and warmer and more deliciously complex when they're considered together than they are alone. And I'm not doing just one thing, but trying to bring in as many different people and skill sets as I can and use the privilege that I have as a Harvard graduate and an American and a white woman to elevate stories that I think really need to be told. For me, poetry isn't just words on a page or words spoken. I think we can find poetry in our fellow human beings by listening to the rhythm of how they speak and listening without the intention to respond. And also, I would say, if you're a girl and you want to go on a journey, do it. Talk to me about it this weekend if you want to. Do your homework and reach out to other people who have done journeys that are somewhat like the one that you want to take and get all the advice you can. The best advice that I ever got about being a solo female traveler was from a really wonderful photographer named Abby's son. And she said, Devi, when you meet someone, decide in the first 3 seconds whether or not you trust them and go with your gut. And that's been a really wonderful guide for the journey so far. Trust your instincts. Trust yourself. You'll figure it out as you go. Things will break and you'll learn how to fix them. And I would just end with saying, I would love to collaborate. And what does activism mean to you? So spasiba, rahmiat, here's to listening.
America?
Yeah. And I've been traveling all around the world for like 4 years.
What do you do in Kazakhstan?
Listening.
Listen. Listen.
Yeah. Listening for stories. So I
About
do
water.
audio recording. Would you have a story? It can be very quick. Yeah. No.
Don't story.
That's okay. Are you from this area?
No. I'm from St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg, yeah.
Yes.
So it's like holiday.
Huh?
Holiday here?
Holiday, every day.
Yes, holiday. Yes.
I mean, that's a good story. Where are you going to? Where are you going to fish?
Balkhash.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are going there.
Lake Balkhash.
Yeah. Okay. You too.
My name is Devi Lockwood, and 4 years ago, I began recording audio stories of water and climate change from around the world. I'm recording this from Kazakhstan. My aim is to humanize the parallel issues of water and climate change that are often discussed in numerical terms: millimeters of sea level rise, degrees of temperature change, or numbers of people displaced. Listening builds empathy, And empathy is a powerful tool to dismantle apathy. It becomes harder to ignore a problem as large as climate change if we hear the voice of someone who is impacted.
Меня зовут Алиса. Я живу на Балхаше, озеро. Это станция Шиганак, получается, начало озера Балхаш. То есть, ситуация у нас тут не лучше, конечно. Соленая вода, в поселке нет ее воды. Вода привозная, мы ее покупаем, потому что местную воду мы пить не можем. Она у нас не обработанная, то есть фильтров, ничего нет. А улов рыбы, рыба уменьшается. Рыбы очень мало стало, цены поднимаются. Жить тяжело здесь, работы нет. Вот как видите сами, как можем. Частные предприниматели, так и крутимся. Моей дочери 7 лет.
She's 7 years old. 7 years old, yeah.
And what does she hope for this area, what it might be like when her daughter is older?
Мне бы хотелось, чтобы здесь был городок, хотя бы небольшой. Какие-то условия для детей, какие-то секции, какие-то там тренажерки, допустим, парк. Мечта наша парк, мы хотим парк, лесопосадку. Просто такой особой-то истории нет, чтобы рассказать что-то интересное. Единственный плюс в том, что мы здесь выросли, нам здесь нравится, как бы не было, нам не создавали там никаких условий, мы их сами себе создаем, живем, радуемся, здесь хорошо. Я, допустим, никуда отсюда уезжать не хочу даже. Здесь прекрасно.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
Вам тоже спасибо.
Yeah, thank you for you.
Спасибо. Thank you so much. What is this town called? What is this town called?
Balhash.
It's Balhash. So do they get that from this area then?
Yeah. Маленькая уличка должна быть. И следующая уличка большая, даже налево.
Is this a K?
Yeah. Yes.
We ask some people.
Yeah.
Who is working here.
Yeah. We just got here, but I would love, if you have a story, I would love to hear it.
What?
Have you lived here since you were small?
Ah, yes, I was born here. Yes. My children.
Собираем. Мы сейчас в Алмате.
Значит, goodbye.
Спасибо.
У нас есть дома хомяк.
Okay.
Нини ее зовут.
Изменением климата, водой общей истории. Поехал сейчас сюда в Казахстан и Хочется услышать историю людей вообще, связанных, живущих с Балхашом рядом.
My name is Devi. I'm from Boston in the United States. And for the last 4 years, I've been traveling all around the world. This is my 17th country so far. I was inspired to do this project by my studies in university, and for my senior thesis, did a bicycle trip down part of the Mississippi River, which is right in the middle of the United States. And the farther down the river I rode my bike, the more stories I was hearing about the impacts of climate change, and I thought it would be really important to listen for how different parts of the world are also impacted by a similar set of issues. So I'm really glad to be here and really curious to listen for stories about anything to do with water or climate change.
У нас истории, мне кажется, все жители Балхаша должны рассказывать. Наше озеро уникально само по себе. У нас может быть тот еще редкий случай, город, где у нас водопроводная вода, да, у нас есть уникальный тоже источник воды пресной питьевой. У нас еще пока здесь у нас можно пить воду из-под крана. Таких, по-моему, вообще стран в мире очень мало осталось. Таких мест вообще просто городов.
В таком климате живем, что у нас степь, вы видите, наверное, вот озеро Балхаш, это как наш оазис такой. И вот буквально отсюда, наверное, 70-90 километров Бихтата у нас есть. И там вода дождевая накапливается, и вот в детстве там много зон, раньше пионерские были, а сейчас зоны отдыха детей. И мы оттуда прям пили воду, потому что она как дистиллированная. Мы набираем, даже химические опыты проводим, и она не реагирует ни на что. То есть она совершенно как дистиллированная, как чистая вода. И она никак не плеснет, не пропадает, ничего с ней не происходит.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for coming and for having me.
Балқаш көлінің суы, оның бір қасиеті, ол бір жағы ащы, бір жағы тұщы. Және де олар ешқашанда қосылмайды, себебі оларда ортасында биік шын тәрізді жаңағы таудың қосындысы бар. Және де бұл Балқаш көлінің қазіргі экология проблемасы деп санаймын. Мына Балқаштың көрсеңіздер, завод бар, мыс өндіретін завод. Сол заводтың жаңағы әртүрлі оның қалдықтары және де ауаға бөлінетін әртүрлі газдар сол судың құрамын және де тұщылығын құртады деп ойлаймын. Сондықтан біздің заводқа менің ойымша әртүрлі жаңағы заман талабына сай фильтрлар қою қажет. Болашақта мен осы сұраққа, сауалға өзім жаңағы зерттеу жүргізіп, осы Балқаш көлінің суының құрамы бұзылмауына өз үлесімді қосамын.
Мы находимся в городе Балхаше. У меня мини-производство по выпуску воды, кваса, лимонада. С городских сетей вода поступает в водоочистку. Здесь засыпные фильтра стоят. Эти фильтра рассчитаны на 2 тонны в час очистки воды. Потом поступает на проекционную лампу, обеззараживает воду и поступает в накопительные баки. И после накопительных баков уже на линию непосредственно розлива.
This machine automatically cleans, fills the water and closes it.
Супруги подойдете Зауре, она вам дополнит. Какие-то вопросы появятся.
Я была в Германии, я была во многих странах, да, не только в Германии. Вот когда ездишь, вот сравниваешь, тогда вот уже видишь, что мы тоже воду мы не ценим.
Меня зовут Олег Медведев. Я житель города Балхаш. Возраст у меня, конечно, почтенный, 59 лет мне в этом году исполняется. Ну, дело в том, что это до такой степени увлекательно, рыбалка на змееголова, что я забросил все остальные свои увлечения, связанные с другими спиннингами. с другими спиннингами и ловлю только строго змееголова. Его развелось в Балхаше. Оп, есть, взял, секунду, ребят, секунду, ребят, секунду, взял. Рыба, как вам сказать, я вот домой не беру ни одной рыбы. Я езжу сюда только получить удовольствие от общения с природой и водой. Вот смотреть на воду и смотреть на огонь, от этого никогда не устанешь, это никогда не надоест. Вот даже несмотря на то, что вот именно в этой рыбалке она происходит, когда ясное солнце, когда жарко, когда к вечеру прилетают комары, не замечаешь ни солнца, ни жару, ни комаров, вот включаешься в эту природу, а посмотрите, какая природа. Вот сейчас летают стрижи. Под вечер полетят оттуда сюда утки, потом полетят гуси, там вот сидит целая куча цапель. С этим как-то объединяешься и в нее врастаешь в эту природу. И очень сильно успокаиваешься.
Жалпы Балхаштың жағдайымен мен кітаптардан емес, болып жатқан тарихи өзгерістердің куәсі ретінде айта аламын. Мысалы, менің туған жерім Алматы облысы Жаркенті, мына Іленің жоғарғы жағында. Балхаштағы судың көлемінің түскені біз өмір сүріп жатырмыз. Балхаш қаласы Балхаш көлінің солтүстік жағалауына орналасқан. Экологиялық апатты жағдайға жетіп қалған аса байқалмайды. Өйткені Балхаш көлінің түбі біздің жаққа қарай солтүстік жаққа қарай көлбе орналасқан суға, тазик сияқты мынандай. Ал мен оңтүстік жағында болдым, Балхаш ауданында. Мысалы, совхоздар бар, ауылдар бар. Кезінде көлдің жағасына салынған 500 метр, 600 метр, білесіздер ғой. Ал қазір олар 10 шақты километр анау алыста, көлге машинамен барады. Мына құстарға байланысты айтайын да. Құстардың 120-дан астам түрі болса, қазір оның жартысына жуығы жоқ. Анау қызғылт фламинголар, соңғы мына ақ құтандар мүлде жойылып кеткен. Бұның себебі өйткені біз жаңағындай әсіресе кеңестер одағының кезінде мына Балхаш көлінің айналасында мына шаруашылық мақсаттағы жұмыстар өте жаңағындай интенсивті жүрді. Жаңағыдай ауыл шаруашылығы болсын, және өндірістік тұрғыдан болсын. Қазір енді климаттың өзгеріп келе жатқан кезде ол денсаулыққа әсер етеді. Бұл әрине бұл әсер еткенде, конечно, жаман әсер етеді, өйткені бұл біздің отанымыз ғой. Отанымызда кім жаман болсын деп есептейді. Бұл енді патриоттық сөз емес, енді просто жай адам ретінде айтып тұрғаным ғой. Оның үстіне Балхаш деген феномен ғой. Адамзаттың мына жердің шарында бұндай көл басқа жерде жоқ. Балхаш көлі үшін жауапкершілікке тек қана біз ғана емес, осы Қазақстан тұрған емес, бүткіл әлем жауап беру керек деп ойлаймын. Альберт айтқан, егерде біз тура осы әдіспен деген суды пайдалана беретін болсақ, жаңа плодородный почва бар ғой, біз соны сумен шайып жібереміз, әрі судың қорын азайтамыз деген. Солай келді мысалы.
Какая бы вода ни была на Земле, это является мировым океаном. То есть это единая система мирового океана.
Қазіргі адамдар жаңағы табиғатты өлтіре, ол өзін өлтіріп жатқанын білмейді.
Ваш приезд и поднятая ваша тема, это, конечно, очень актуально, потому что человек без воды не может жить. И вот эти проблемы, которые вы поднимаете, очень большой, хороший пример для нашей молодежи.
And so I want to change this world to the better side.
So people ask me all the time, why water? Here, like anywhere else in the world, water is life. It's something that humans and all living things can't survive without.
My name is Devi Lockwood. I set myself the goal of documenting 1,001 voices. To date, I have recorded 750 stories in 17 countries and counting. My goal in this project is to create a kind of living, multi-vocal piece that breathes differently.